I've been holding on to something that's eating me alive. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe none of this is real, but I need to tell someone, and this is the only option left I have to turn to. My name is Sean. Let me take you back to when it all started. At 25, I thought I had it all figured out. Ash and I were high school sweethearts, the kind of love story people write movies about. When I slipped that ring on her finger, the whole world seemed to glow. And the wedding? God, she was radiant. Even her mom outshone every star in the sky that night. I couldn't remember a lot about my childhood, I guess in a way that pushed me towards building a whole new family. Then life decided to throw its first curveball. One wrong move at my union job, and suddenly I was trapped in physical therapy, watching the weeks blur into months. The bills started piling up like the autumn leaves, and that's when the cracks began to show. Ash picked up extra shifts at a local store, while I found comfort at the bottom of a bottle. I should have known better, but I didn't. And that's not the worst part, not by a long shot. No, this seems like a minuscule compared to what I'm preparing to tell you. The divorce papers came as no surprise. Neither did losing the house. Ash deserved better than what I'd become, and I couldn't blame her for saving herself. So there I was, another statistic, another failed marriage, another guy starting over in the city. Found myself a one-bedroom apartment. You know how it goes. When the city folk flood into the suburbs, us working stiffs can sometimes catch a break on rent in the city, waiting until they decide to come back, and then my rent will be fucked. Living alone was a big struggle. 25 years old, and I'd never really been by myself before. Not as far as I could remember anyway. Everything was going as well as it could be at the new place. Adjusting was difficult. Unfortunately, though, I started to feel very deeply alone. No surprise, I knew there'd be a sort of grieving period when moving in on my own. But it became mind-numbing. Silence became my enemy. Strange, since I once craved those peaceful moments. But then the quiet felt like a black hole, swallowing everything that once made life worth living. The apartment groaned at night, and each sound was a cruel reminder. No more midnight daddy whispers, no pitter-patter of sleepy feet down the hall. I've never felt more alone than in that king-size bed, a vast wasteland where Ash's warmth used to be. Sometimes I forgot, just for a second. I'd turn to share something funny I saw on my phone with her, my lips already forming the words before reality crashes back. There's only empty space where she should be. Our wedding photo lied buried in a box I couldn't bear to touch, along with Emma's messy finger paintings and Jack's worn baseball mitt, artifacts of a life I couldn't bear live anymore. My hands still search for them in the dark, muscle memory refusing to accept what my heart knows. Mornings were just motions. Coffee tasted like ash. Breakfast is a symphony of silence. And Ash's chair mocks me from across the table, her half-finished crosswords forever frozen in time. I've started talking to myself, desperate to hear something, anything. But weekends. God, the weekends are just endless. No sideline cheering at soccer games, no blanket forts during family movie nights, no kitchen chaos with pancake batter everywhere and sticky-faced kids giggling at the table. 3 months in this place, and it was still just a shell with furniture. Home was wherever they were, which meant I was left in that husk, suffocating in all that goddamn quiet. One memory surfaced tonight, cutting through decades of fog. I was small, nestled in my mother's lap, and for the first time since everything, I could see her, really see her. Her hair caught the light like copper wire, waves cascading past her shoulders, and her hazel eyes shifted colors like autumn leaves in a stream, brown to green, to something almost blue. Her fingers worked through my hair, gentle at first, until her words turned that tenderness into something else entirely.
There are places,
She whispered, her voice like honey over broken glass.
where existence itself changes, not empty, exactly. More like a space between spaces, where everything we know just stops.
I twisted in her lap to look up at her, but her eyes were fixed on something far beyond our living room walls.
We could reach it, leave everything behind, all the weight, all the darkness that follows us. And there are things there, beings that could show us the way. They don't belong in our world, but they understand the paths between.
Like monsters. My child's voice seemed to echo strangely in the memory. Like monsters. My child's voice seemed to echo strangely in the memory. She flinched, just slightly.
No, more like guides. They could take us somewhere safe, somewhere where pain can't follow, just you and me, in the right kind of nothing.
Would we be safe, Mom? Like we've always... Her voice crackled like static, her attempt at my name fragmenting into impossible sounds. Wanted. The memory releases me, dropping me back into my empty living room like a stone into dark water. Something about that conversation feels wrong, twisted, like a door that shouldn't exist in a familiar hallway. Why surface now after all these years? Is it connected to my blank space, that yawning chasm between my 13th year, when my mother was attacked and I vanished, and my inexplicable return? The therapists called it trauma response, this wall between me and my past. But this memory, I must have been 9, maybe 10. It's the first glimpse I've ever had of the time before, and now that I've seen it, something has changed. My house started feeling wrong ever since that moment. The shadows don't just darken the corners anymore. They pulse with a sick, hungry rhythm. Each time I lift my beer, they seem to ripple, as if breathing. The emptiness has weight now, pressing against my ribs until each breath becomes a struggle. Something flickers just beyond my vision, too quick to catch but too deliberate to dismiss. And I know with a certainty that turns my blood to ice that I'm being watched. The shadows have eyes. They've always had eyes. In crowds, in empty rooms, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, they're listening, waiting. And somehow, I think they've been waiting since that conversation in my mother's lap, patient as only the truly ancient can be. The first few incidents were subtle enough to doubt. My bedroom door, which I'd sworn I'd closed, would be cracked open at midnight, a sliver of darkness peering in. Then came the drawers, gaping open like hungry mouths when I'd return home. Cups vanished from countertops, only to appear days later in impossible places. The TV developed a mind of its own, crackling to life in the dead of night, its screen casting blue light across my walls. But the moment my footsteps approached, it would die. An electric wheeze following the darkness the empty screen brought. The door incidents escalated. No longer content with subtle cracks, I'd wake to find it thrown wide open, as if something had burst through while I slept. I searched The door incidents escalated. No longer content with subtle cracks, I'd wake to find it thrown wide open, as if something had burst through while I slept. I searched every inch of my house, my closet, under my bed, the tiny gap behind the water heater, convinced someone had taken up residence in my walls. But the apartment is small, not much room for people to hide, only shadows that seem to deepen with each passing day. Then, just as suddenly as hell broke loose, everything went still. The silence that followed wasn't peace, though. It was worse. I tried to convince myself it was over, desperately clinging to that thought as days melted into weeks. Life took on same facade of normalcy I had before. Wake up, work, come home, lose myself in mindless reality shows until sleep came. I caught myself talking more and more to an empty apartment. I guess it had become a habit. Maybe it was the loneliness. That Friday night, 3 bottles of beer deep into a game show marathon, I felt almost normal again. The contestant on screen fumbled an answer so obvious it might as well have been written in neon. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, loose and genuine. "Idiot," I snorted, shaking my head at the TV. That was an easy question. The response that followed, the response I didn't expect, came from just behind my left ear. "Hey." The whisper slithered into my ear like ice water down my spine. I whipped around, heart thundering against my ribs. Empty room. Just the TV's laughter echoing and my ragged breathing. "Hey." Closer this time. Intimate. As if something had pressed its lips right against my ear. I launched myself off the couch, fists clenched so tight my nails cut half-moons into my palms. "Who the fuck is there?" The voice that answered wasn't human. It used my words, but wrong, like someone had recorded my voice and played it backward, but it warped. "Who the fuck is there?" It rasped, a wet, guttural mockery of my own terror. I immediately called the cops, but they were useless. They swept through my house with flashlights and condescending smiles, finding nothing but a man they clearly thought was losing his mind. Maybe I was. The look in their eyes, that mixture of pity and professional detachment, told me everything I needed to know about how I sounded. Rasped, a wet, guttural mockery of my own terror. I immediately called the cops, but they were useless. They swept through my house with flashlights and condescending smiles, finding nothing but a man they clearly thought was losing his mind. Maybe I was. The look in their eyes, that mixture of pity and professional detachment, told me everything I needed to know about how I sounded. Rasped, a wet, guttural mockery of my own terror. I immediately called the cops, but they were useless. They swept through my house with flashlights and condescending smiles, finding nothing but a man they clearly thought was losing his mind. Maybe I was. The look in their eyes, that mixture of pity and professional detachment, told me everything I needed to know about how I sounded. Itself to someone else. I knew I couldn't keep waiting, letting whatever it was continue to torment me. So I made a choice, one I'd soon add to my ever-growing list of regrets. I called my father. Our relationship was complicated enough, but ever since I came back, he'd become something else entirely. A shell. A ghost wearing my father's face. The phone rang once, twice, then a voice, unfamiliar. "Hello, this is Nurse Hannah at Redacted Nursing Home. How may I help you?" My throat tightened. "This is Sean, Redacted. I need to speak with my father, Austin, Redacted. One moment, connecting you to room 12. The line crackled, and then, Who the hell is this?" My father's voice, raw and hostile. "Dad, I need to..." "Son?" His tone shifted, broke. My son died a decade ago. Him and my wife both. Gone. Ice spread through my chest. "Dad, I didn't die. I'm right here talking to you. It's Sean." "That's not my son's name," he was shouting now. "My boy was Noah." "Please, Dad." I pressed my fingers against my temple. "Not this again. I just need Mom's maiden name. Maybe track down some family I never knew about." "Diane?" His voice softened at her name. "Her brother Kent lives out in the sticks. Weird one, that man." My pulse quickened. "Kent who?" He growled, low and angry, before spitting out, "Redacted." "Thanks, Dad." "My son is dead, damn it." I hung up before he could spiral further. He'd been like this since I returned, screaming that I wasn't his son, inventing this Noah person. I tried not to dwell on it, told myself it was just trauma talking, but sometimes, in the dark of night, his words would echo in my head,